This is Practice with Krista and Kayla, a podcast in which we talk about practice and practice of various kinds.
Missed out all the times we had together. Think of whether we would actually have our time.
It's now 4 o'clock, the time that we said we would begin. So I'm glad that we started a little bit early.
Exactly.
Hi, Krista.
Hi, Kayla.
So, you want to introduce yourself? You want to
Yeah.
tell me who you
Tell
are?
you who I am. So I'm Kristana Lewis. Or I feel like I need to say it more suavely.
Just get real close to that mic.
Close to the mic.
Yeah.
Wow, you do that so well. Are you a professional at recording your own voice?
Yeah, it's almost like I've done this before and gotten paid for it.
Well, I have not done that.
So Krista, what's your deal?
So my deal, I'm a photographer and a creative, an artist, if you will. I make a lot of things. I make photographs for hire. Hire me, please. And I make ceramics. That's been my new thing. My ceramic studio just opened up. And I am a designer, a web designer. Yeah, so that's my deal. And I'm going to grad school for design at SVA in the fall. So I'm just a creative du jour, if you will. I love having my hands in many, many mediums at once, and just manifesting things is kind of how I think of it. And I'm a yoga student, a pretty avid yoga doer. Now, as of this month, meditator.
Wow. So you're a maker, you're a doer, you're a sitter. I don't know what the meditative.
I like that.
Yeah.
So Kayla, tell me about you and your doing and making and
Gosh,
practice.
Krista, thank you for asking. Well, I'm Kayla Mechi Chambers. I am an artist and educator. Grew up in Manhattan and Brooklyn, and now based in Jersey City. I am in a graduate program at the moment. I'm pursuing an MFA in visual art, concentrating in printmaking, which is, with the pandemic, things are a little complicated. So we'll see. My own practice in visual art is pretty interdisciplinary. It includes printmaking and sculpture and a lot of writing. So I think that I could describe that as my kind of main practice, my main thing that I do. But I also have some sort of like freelance design experience as well. So that's who we are.
Yeah. Why a podcast? Why with each other? Why about practice? Which I think even practice ties in nicely to who we are and what we do, because practice is so much a part of our lives and how we think about our making practices. I mean, it's right there in the name that I just decided to give it.
I mean, I'm really excited about this idea, because for both of us as creative people, having and nurturing a practice is like, I think probably where we invest a lot of our own self-worth, or at least for me. But like you said, like you're not just a practicer of creative making, but also of yoga and meditation. And there are so many other practices that will be really interesting to get into with hopefully we can have people come on with us and chat about their practices also.
We will. So I think a good place to also kind of start this off is talking about setting the stage, if you will, for what our practices are and how we think about practices. And like you just said, how we put our self-worth in that, and start off with a very personal, broad overview of what practice means to us. So what does it mean to you in your day-to-day life?
That's a perfect question. Yeah, I mean, practice has so many applications. I mean, there's also just like practical applications as a thing, but like to practice, or to be in practice, or to have a practice, all kind of revolve around, I think, the continued doing of something, doing something over and over, in order to maintain like a kind of state of doing. Or, doing can be also, I'm sounding so woo woo right now,
It is
but,
to a certain extent.
but yeah, I mean, if we like really kind of broadly think about what practice is, it can be so many things. And so for me, I would say, if when I think of a practice as applied to my life, immediately what comes to mind is my art practice, which is, it's hard to like nail down at the moment, because usually what my practice might involve is like daily going to the studio or going to the print shop. And now that we've been at home, I haven't really like set foot outside my door in a
Yeah.
substantial way since like early March. And now trying to figure out like what is my practice, my art practice at home, is it looks really different. What about you? What comes to mind when you think of that?
I think the first thing is yoga for me. And I think partially because that is when I really took practice as a literal thing in my life about doing. And I remember kind of the first time I was like, oh yeah, it's all a practice. Like that's what this is, was in a yoga class talking about like we were trying headstands for, the nth time. And just having the teacher be like, it doesn't matter if you nail it today. What matters is that you're like trying and practicing for the next time. And it's like, I think this idea that practice isn't about making perfect. It's about doing, and that kind of matchup between doing and practice feels very important to me. And it's very like soothing to me in my own anxieties around perfectionism, that thinking about things as a practice helps me to do things when I'm getting caught up in like making something perfect.
It's very
really,
like it's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
But like less wooey and annoying in my own mind, at least. And really, I mean, lately, especially with the pandemic, like my photography work has been stop and start. But my ceramic studio just opened up again, and like my goal has been to go for an hour, no more, no less, like really enforce that like it is a time to practice making ceramics and to take pressure off of myself from like making a perfect thing, and make it about the practice of working with clay. So it's something that's been like very much on my mind, at least with that medium in particular, because it's the one that I've decided to use as a practice during the pandemic, because like you, my other practices have kind of gone haywire with the whole staying home and isolation thing.
It's funny, I think, how it never occurred to me before how much a part of like place is such a part of practice to me, that like when I don't know, there's like a place for practicing something specific, like you practice your art practice, or your studio practice happens in a studio, or your ceramics practice happens in the ceramic studio, and it's almost like it depends on leaving your house, like leaving your house, being in a designated zone in order to focus on a thing. Um, okay, so not discontinuing that train of thought, but it just occurred to me actually that like so many things that occur to you that are like so blindingly obvious, that my entire art practice is about practice. In fact, like I I for the past few years have been doing this kind of series of like worksheets, which is sort of about processes of learning or re-educating or taking in information. So I will make these kind of worksheets based on the things that I, in my personal life, would like to have a roadmap for, and learn how to deal with better, or learn a way to deal with the things that I have in my life that are kind of undealable with. It's this sort of like paradox of like wanting to make a tool that will help me get through something that is inherently impossible to just fix. But anyway, yeah, it's all about like repetition and practice. And so my practice is in fact practice, which I think if you're not seeing the work might not make a lot of sense, but
We'll
I
figure
do
out a
kind
way
of
to
yeah yeah
to add visuals.
yeah.
That I think in a different way, my personal photography work has also been about, well, practice might be a stretch, and I'm curious to hear your take with this and interpretation, because I think your worksheets being about practice is dead on. But my produce rotting series, and I think a lot of my work has dealt with the act of growing up and the kind of state of being in your 20s and learning how to take care of yourself and learning how to interact with other people. And I think practice is a part of that, in that you need to practice to get good at that, or to get to a point where you can take care of yourself. I try not to like have good and bad as qualifiers on things in my life, because that just leads to a wonderful anxiety spiral about not being good enough. But I think there's something about both of our work where we use it to process our pasts and to grow up, or to take care of ourselves, or I don't know, maybe you have a better, I feel like neither of those really fit the kind of common theme.
Yeah, no, I get what you're, yeah, I feel like
I can't hear you.
Oh no, why?
Hello from the future. We had a technical difficulty, but we get back into it right now.
Yes, but even since we had a little technical difficulty break, I am wondering, and partially because I know I'm prone to overreaching connection occasionally, so I'm very curious to see your take on my practice, my photography specifically practice, or at least how practice, I guess for me, pertains to the growing up aspect of what my photography work has dealt with.
I think for both of us, and this is true for just a lot of artists in general who use their personal life in some way in their own art practices. I feel like the things that we're making work about are things that we are practicing as people, like practicing not in a sort of professional sense, but practicing as like, I'm trying to not waste food, or like I'm trying to practice not wasting food, or I'm trying to practice, self-reflection, or I'm trying to practice being a loving inner parent, or like those things that we are personally trying to practice in our daily lives are also the things that we're making work about in our creative practices. So it's practice about practice. We're getting levels deep.
I think that's very well put.
I'm just trying to think about like what, because there are so many applications of the word practice, right? So you have a yoga practice, a ceramics practice, a a photography practice, and then there might be like the various things that you're practicing to do. Like, I don't know, what are the things that kind of, I feel like practice implies repetition of something, like when you're practicing a language or you're practicing an instrument.
The first thing that pops into my mind that I've definitely been practicing in isolation has been keeping my apartment clean and tidy. Like cleaning the kitchen is a practice for sure. And part of it, I think, in order for me to consider it a practice has been to make it like meditation morning time and to kind of make it into like a little bit of a waking up ritual of like putting the dishes away or putting them in the dishwasher and like tidying things as I go around is kind of a like continual doing of tidying that I've never before done in my life. I've never been someone who has done that.
Well, but something about being trapped in your house like makes you need to
What?
I don't know, want to tend to it. I've been trying to think about like what are the other things that I practice, and I don't think I can claim, like I would love to say that I'm doing the kind of rituals that you're talking about, even those sort of like daily ones, but I don't know. Can you have a practice that you're not being intentional about? I feel like having a practice implies that you are actively practicing something. Like you don't practice like brushing your teeth. I mean, I don't know. Do you? I guess you have to actively brush your teeth.
When you're really young, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. And then you become a master of brushing your teeth, and then it's no longer a practice. It's like just flexing. Yes.
I'm at the point where I still need to practice flossing regularly, but I don't.
Right. So I guess, I mean, so practicing, does that like imply that then you are not a master of something? Or that you can never quite be, like, even if you're like a, first chair violinist, I think I know what that means, like a really good musician, like really, really good. You still have to practice, right? But it's towards the aim of getting, I guess it's towards the aim of getting better. Mm-hmm. Or maintaining.
Yeah. I think you just hit on something kind of important about practice, is that it's not necessarily about, I mean, this goes back to like making perfect or perfection. Like it can kind of be around that, but it's about doing something, and it's not mutually exclusive with someone externally declaring you the height of your craft. It is a continual, lifelong thing that you intentionally sit down to do. And I think a lot of the times too, you begrudgingly do it because you know you need to practice. A woman I once worked for, a blogger, she was French, so like she loved talking about like bread and croissants and stuff, but she loved the analogy of like you have to, as a creative, have to be like a baker and get up and make your bread every day. And like I think that also stuck with me. I mean, clearly stuck with me. But I like that idea of it's about doing, not mastering.
That's
and the mastering
really
comes from the doing.
I love that. I love that like baking idea. Not that I do that, but I aspire.
Your husband does.
Yeah. I mean, I think you and I, Krista, are people who aspire. I mean, we should all be aspiring, right? But like,
yeah.
I have this. There's this great book that I have that's just a collection of like people's rituals. Do you have? Maybe I don't know. I think I've shown it to you once.
I think you've shown. I think I always see it in like bookstores and want to buy it, but I kind of talk myself out of it, which is how I walk around bookstores, is constantly like the push and pull of like, what do I buy? Which I love, but
long ago, the before times when we could do that.
I know.
I have this book that it's just like rituals of makers, people's practices, really. I mean, it doesn't say, I don't think it says that in those words, but it's just like a collection of various, scientists, composers, dancers, writers, all of these folks who, throughout history largely white men in the upper class, who were became famous writers or playwrights or artists or whatever, and it just details like sort of their what their daily routines were and how they went about making things each day. And there were all those sort of like manic depressive artist writers who like drank too much and that was their routine, and then there were like composers and writers who were just like thoughtful, wealthy white men with household staffs and wives who made sure that they were fed and that they had their room to study in, or their cabin to go and contemplate and look into the pond and make the thing. And but I think there are some people for whom it would be like writing on scraps of paper between shifts at work, or during or after childcare. But for like the vast majority, the thing that they had that allowed them to make things was time. That they had like days that they had structured to their own needs, that like in order to write or compose, they would wake up at this hour and have this breakfast and do this series of tasks, because that's what they had found enabled their practice. And I don't know if I'm communicating this so well, but it's been interesting during this like lockdown period, because the one thing that those of us who are not essential workers have had is this sort of like kind of paralyzing abundance of time, and the kind of I don't know, we could kind of pretend to be those like lordly fellows who wake up and are very disciplined about like having their breakfast and sitting down to work and writing from the hours of 10 to 12, and then having, I don't know, basically I'm talking about how do you structure your time to make a practice. That's a very long-winded
there's so many details to it and so many ways to do it, which is I think what you brought in by bringing in all of that book. I feel like there are so many threads that I want to talk about from what you just said.
Yes, how to do a practice, how to do structure the practice in a good way.
Yeah, which is like so much of what I have wanted for so long, and it's so hard to do that. Like I have been freelance for like 3 years now. We both like post college have had kind of like odd jobs / like I did have my career at the blog, call it that for now, I guess.
The blog that
the
shall
blog.
not be named.
That shall not be named. That trying to think of how I structured my time there was much more stress and anxiety based rather than coming from a place of practicing things there or like structuring in order to do. It was more of like managing chaos and overwhelm. But since then I've been really trying to like structure my time and like have felt that like abundance of time and how to manage it is like a real struggle that I've been living with for a while, like to the point that when lockdown started I was like, I feel like this is normal and I'm well prepared for this because I've been thinking about how to structure my time for years, even though I still don't have it down. And part of why I signed up for this meditation class, because I was like, this is going to get me up and out of bed. And that is one of the hardest things for me to do. I've always been a night person. But that feels like a tangent from our topic.
Well, no, it's really, it's like how to structure, because we can talk about kind of practice in a very kind of floaty conceptual way, like we were in the beginning, like what is your practice about and what are you doing and what are you investigating, but then there's also like the really logistical aspects of a practice where it's like what address do you go to, what are the steps that you like, what do you eat before and after exercising, for example, or like what you know, and I think there's so much I think wellness culture that's trying to give you the correct formula for how to be the most productive or how to be the most well that we would all like to have the answers to, of just like, well, you know, that high earning CEO wakes up at 5 a.m. every morning, so that must be the practice, like that must be what enables that person to do that thing. You're
Yes, I
raising
feel
your
like you
hands.
just hit on. I know, I'm gonna start doing this because I feel like I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
verbally interject.
That's great.
I feel like you just hit on like such an issue with like late capitalist culture and wellness culture of this idolization of people at the top who got there under their own unique circumstances that we can't replicate for each person, but we have this myth of the practice as this one person, it works for them, that's how it should work for me. That is, so I think, ultimately really harmful to like look at people and think that you can do something or like are inherently going to respond well to how they do things for themselves when they've put in the time and energy to figure out what works best for them.
We're looking for like routine ready to wear. We're like, what size am I? You know, am I an Oprah? Let me try on the Oprah lifestyle and wake up when Oprah does and go to the bathroom when Oprah does, instead of just like tailoring to your own life and body and needs.
Yes, which, I mean, I just got a sewing machine, and I'm like getting patterns in fabric and like I'm waiting for thread, and then I will be actually able to sew things. All of my other materials have arrived, but I've been thinking a lot about the like customization of sewing, and I've worked in fashion for a long time, so like that's something I definitely use as a lens for a lot of the world. But practice ready to wear is so good, and so much too of like our lives are now ready to wear, and so many things are ready to wear. I mean, we also studied art history together in undergrad, and so I feel like ready to wear is a good synonym for the ready made too.
Right, and ready to wear meaning like it comes in its size and you fit into it rather than the other way around. That you know, you exist and then the clothes or whatever are tailored to your form, and you're not trying to fit into a form that is standardized,
Yeah.
or
Which I
based
think
off
is
of a model
ultimate.
that doesn't have your body or needs or whatever.
I mean, I could talk for hours
Yeah.
about how that fucked up my own body image.
Yeah,
And
that's a cool. Yeah, we should definitely. I definitely want to talk about your practice of getting dressed. Something you were talking about just a bit before, though, about like just like I think this is kind of the chronic condition of creatives in our generation, or probably creatives, you know, in most generations, is that you kind of cobble together. You either, you know, have a day job and then your creative practice happens in the time in between your working hours, or you cobble together many you know, freelance jobs or part-time jobs or some combination of those things, and then designate time in between for your own practice, or whatever, like the way that you fit your practice in and privilege it as not just a hobby but something worth spending your money earning working hours on. Like when a thing that you're doing crosses the line from being a hobby or something frivolous or something like that you're doing just for fun versus becoming a practice that you're serious about, which doesn't necessarily, like, again, I'm using this sort of, we're in this it's capitalism, so time is money and money is time, and you know, if you're spending your time doing ceramics, that's time you could be spending making money, and so then how do you make that decision?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, at least with ceramics, especially because there's like a tangible thing and then I accumulate a lot of these things, like it automatically goes to how do I make money from this process that I enjoy and is soothing for me and therapeutic in a way for me. And I love the end results. I get like so much joy out of seeing things come out of the kiln, but like there's always that really ingrained mental kick in. I can't think of the word that I had a few seconds ago for that. For how to capitalize on this. Like all of our hobbies or all of our practices should serve the purpose of capitalization because we're putting our time into it and our time is money.
Oh, yeah. yeah. And then the pressure that comes with that it's like it's only worth your time. Doing something is only worth your time if you can make money from it. And there are certainly people who like do not accept that as a rule and are like, listen, like I have a day job, I enjoy it, that's how I sustain myself, and my practice is for me and only for me, and I don't try to monetize it. But then, I mean, if you think about like, you know, apart from creative practices, like a really common practice would be like a law practice or doctor's practice, or like those offices are called practices, right? Because and they're certainly not doing it just for like shits and giggles. They're definitely doing it to like make a living and hopefully help people.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I think it's interesting as my next thought, or I guess as a parallel to that, is that artistic practice used to be seen as a living that you went to apprentice for. And that it is kind of within capitalism that creativity as a hobby or a personal practice has grown ultimately as this whole new kind of new branch of creativity that we're kind of allowed to have because of the capitalist systems that we're in and the privilege that we have within that of free time and a work week, and that we've also seen decline more recently with technology. And the kind of universality of like being on call all the time, or like the loosening of boundaries, I guess is what I mean to say, of corporate jobs or day jobs. I think there's, and I feel like I'm trying to map this out and I don't even have a full lineage of it, but of how we think of creativity over, you know, hundreds of years, how that's changed from a job and because of capitalism to a practice.
Right. And the kind of heroicism of the artist or of the creative that like at some point in history, and we're talking mostly of like Western history.
Yeah.
At some point there's this crossover from like artist as kind of servant to artist as hero. The Renaissance did that. Yes. Right? That was the Renaissance. I don't know. Whatever.
Well, I think it's very interesting to talk about the Renaissance in this current time because I've seen it brought up a lot as like a post-plague time, like looking like that's kind of the last time that we have a historical blueprint of what happens after society goes, oh shit, everyone's getting sick and dying. And it's kind of like people going, I've seen it a lot in terms of talking about fashion and how people go for like ruffles and big things and colors and opulence. But just, I mean, it is a historical pattern of once we have times of stress or cultural trauma, we go to celebration after, or visually go to celebration and opulence. Or like there's even after World War I and the Spanish flu was the Roaring 20s.
We're in the Roaring 20s now. Just kidding.
Oh, baby.
I don't know. The cough. No, never mind. I take edit. We're editing it out.
remove. Note to future self. Remove.
Okay. So yeah. It's, the conversation about what will become of art right now is a whole thing that we're all very stressed out about.
Yeah.
Because it looks very different now.
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess what we were kind of touching on is like the kind of self-indulgence of art making or of creative practices, and how that fits into like self-worth and money making and the way that you use your time and how you allow yourself what's that book the book, the one with the like do the
Julia
creative...
Cameron is the author.
Is it I'm thinking of the like
nearby.
the morning pages.
Yeah. Julia
Her?
Cameron's the author.
Wow, thank you. You do read my mind.
Just like this, I do it.
Yeah. The idea that
Googling
like
it.
everybody has a creative practice lying in wait, and that you can do things to nurture it, and that we should all allow ourselves to do that. There's just a kind of spectrum of
way.
like thank you. I'm just like, Krista, what's that book? You're like, I got you.
I know it.
Yeah.
I did half of it.
Yeah. Well, so another thing we wanted to do with this was to give ourselves like weekly challenges that have to do with practice or things to practice. So our first one was to go for daily walks. How did that go for you?
It was hard some days, but ultimately helpful.
Did you go for a walk every day? Did you do the
Yes.
thing that we said we would do?
Yes,
Is
I
what
did.
I'm
To
asking.
you?
I think I skipped one day when it was
I
bad
might
weather.
Yes, I only walked on that day because walking to my ceramic studio takes like 15 minutes, and I was like, or it takes 15 minutes there and back, and I was like, that counts. I walked there, I walked home. That's a walk. Like,
Yeah. I mean, did walks for utility count? I counted them
for that one.
as walks.
Yeah, like that one, a walk for utility. That was long enough. If it was like 15 minutes, I was like that was kind of what I considered my minimum walking time. And then most of the time I walked for like 20 minutes.
How did that change your life a little bit? Did that change your life in a small way? What were the results from your this practice experiment?
Did it change your life?
Was it
a life-changing experience for you? I mean, that's such a big statement, but it felt helpful, especially I tended to go in the like late afternoons, early evenings, and I went on one when it was like the blue hour, and it just was like so nice out, and I hadn't been outside, and like that's such a time I love in summer when it's not daytime but it's not yet dark out. And just taking the time to walk around. I think I was listening to Justin Bieber too as I was walking around, so I was vibing.
Yeah, that's a mood.
It was a mood. And then also living in Park Slope, or like on the border of Park Slope, I walked that day like more into my neighborhood, and it was dark enough that people whose houses had lights on I could like fully see their interior design, which is one of also my favorite things about living in New York and like walking around the neighborhoods.
Peeping.
So it was
just peeping.
Just peeping, just being a little
straight
voyeur.
peeping. Yeah.
Like, so it felt like a renormalization from isolation in a way that I hadn't had in a while, and it felt like it filled the nostalgia that I've been feeling for this city. It made me feel like I was here again.
Aw,
I know.
that's so nice.
It was really nice.
That's so nice. My experience was the opposite.
Oh no.
Honestly, Krista, it made me hate the city. It made
Well, you live in
me
Jersey.
want to leave. Yeah. Yeah. No, but you know what? The thing is about New York, and what's unfortunate about it is that having grown up there, walking around just makes me sad. It only makes me sad. Like, I think that walking around in Manhattan or in Brooklyn only makes me sad these days. Or what I should say these past few years that I didn't realize, and I was like huffy and angry about it, but like it's just the fact, I guess. And so, yeah, walking around Jersey City, which is not where I'm from, but I've been living here for the past couple of years. And you know, the reasons that I chose to live here were like proximity to Manhattan so that I could get in and out, so that I could go to work easily, and space inside the apartment. I mean, granted, like we're talking about like New York City space. So, you know, 1 or 2 extra square feet is like a big deal in the city. But like going for walks, first of all, going for walks with a mask on, and it's like muggy and hot. I don't like the summer in general. There's construction everywhere, so a lot of roads are closed off, and it's ugly. It's just there's nothing beautiful to look at. There's not really any nature. Like we could kind of make our way to the water, and then you're like, okay, now I'm here. It just, you know, it just made me really feel like I need to leave. It made me feel like, I don't know, being just actually interacting with the place where I live. I wish that I could like walk around and be like, oh, how romantic. And I love this place and this, that didn't happen for me. It just made me feel like, I wish I was in the country. I wish I could like sit outside without having to put a mask on, in like a yard with a tree. I wish there was a tree I could look at, and wind, or, you know, a bird, like not my own bird, but like a wild one, you know, like, and not a gross pigeon. Like, I think we're so, when we're active in the city, so much of, I feel like walking to me has been like a means to an end. It's like the main mode of transportation. And so I'm often like running to and from a place with like a thermos and something I'm shoving into my mouth, and like hurrying off to the next thing that I'm going to. But when you actually just like stop, and I could, I don't know, take this all back at some point. But I think for me, this exercise during this time right now, during the pandemic, during like, you know, I just felt trapped. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I just felt trapped. And I was like, I wish that I was walking along a dirt path with trees around me, and not like this, you know, oversaturated construction zone.
Yeah, you're making me realize the privilege I have in my neighborhood.
You down.
No, I mean, partially it's making me grateful, but I also still, even living in a neighborhood that has a bunch of like 100-plus-year-old brownstones and right near Prospect Park, I'm feeling very grateful for that. But also, I still, throughout quarantine, have felt that same urge of just like, I need a backyard where I can go and be without a mask and like lay in my own grass and not like just be able to have my own nature bubble on top of my own inside bubble, because it's so real in this city, especially when you don't have access to a park or any sort of like patch of nature anywhere nearby. It's so, we need it so much.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess the practice of wandering, the practice of like wandering, walking, finding yourself in unexpected places, just like meandering. There is something kind of dreamy and romantic about it, that you don't have to necessarily be in like any setting could be fine. I think it just, I don't know.
I will say, while you think on that,
Yeah.
I have a thought. Because having grown up in LA and then Colorado, I'm very like familiar with living in spaces with more space outside. And walking is not something I ever did there. Like, I would always take a car. I mean, I think it was a form of rebellion to be like, the old people go on walks after dinner. I'm not doing that. So like moving to New York is the most I've ever walked and the most I have ever appreciated walking. And for me, that kind of meander around the city is something so unique to New York that other places just aren't walking places. They don't have the sidewalks, or there's nowhere to go. Like living in Colorado, there's just like, I mean, I guess there's hiking as another form of walking, but that in and of itself is an event to go on a hike rather than just to kind of meander. And I think you really hit on that. Meandering is such a draw for us living in this city. And for me, I think that's the thing I felt nostalgic for, was just kind of like walking with no end goal, because there was like an amount of time to, I don't even want to say kill, but that's the euphemism that's coming to mind, but amount of time to spend. So you just kind of walk around in a neighborhood until your next thing, as a means of stacking your schedule in this city.
Yeah. It's like walking, I think, at least has always felt like connective tissue rather than like the thing that you're getting to. Like, I don't know that I've ever in my life actually just practiced walking to go on a walk. Like, I don't think I've ever just taken a walk. It was always to get somewhere, even if it was like the scenic way or the roundabout way, or like, oh, I'm 20 minutes early, so I'll just walk around for a little while. It was always like a forward moving action rather than like a, I don't know, connecting with where you are. Although I guess it's very different like when you're walking in a new place. Like, there's walking to explore, there's walking to get somewhere, there's walking for exercise. I mean, I guess I'm not like a walking for the pleasure of walking kind of person. I'd much rather sit down.
Same.
I love to sit. Sitting is great.
Every time I would come back from a walk, my legs would be twitching, and I would just sit and be like, I'm so happy I'm sitting now.
Yeah.
But something too that I realized from the walking and that you just mentioned is that walking for exercise was such a built-in part of our way of living here, whether it was because the walking wasn't the end goal, it was just an accidental byproduct of like how we get around. And I've like realized I've like fluffed up a bit from not walking, because I've still been exercising a lot, but so much of my cardio health has come from walking around rather than like actively like going to the gym. So I was able to like have an exercise practice that was more low impact and more about stretching and strength rather than cardio health.
Yeah, it's like our walking practices in the city are accidental or incidental. Like, it's just, yeah, again, it's like this connective tissue in between activities that like I've never actually just intentionally sought to do. And I think there was something like really, for me, really restless and upsetting about taking walks each day this past week, where it was like I was so aware that I wasn't walking to something. I wasn't walking to go to work or walking to, like, I always, on the way to things, really enjoyed that in between time where I would like walk the blocks to get to the place, but I wouldn't just walk for the sake of walking. And I think for the past week, while I've been walking each day, I've become so aware of how I just feel so caged. Even in, even outside, it feels so claustrophobic outside.
That's, I think,
I don't know.
What we're talking about is kind of how we mentally frame the walking, and the feeling of being caged also comes from framing, especially when you're like out and moving. It's all about your perspective. And it also just made me realize that a lot of my walks were to go to the park and back. So like there was an objective to just walk through the park, because I've been very anxious about how close people have been getting in the park. And at the start of lockdown, had friends who were going on runs and were just like, it almost caused a panic attack. Like, I can't go there. People are so close. They're not taking this seriously. So this was the first time I'd been to the park, and that, I think, as the place I was going to, made me feel freer than just walking around the block. So that makes sense to me, that's how you were feeling from the walk as activity.
Well, there's like there's also like walking meditation as a practice, and I've in my couple of trips to monasteries and like having Buddhist meditation weekend time, whatever that's called, I've done like walking meditations that have been so wonderful, and you're just like focusing on the really foundation, just what it is to walk, and like putting one foot in front of the other and breathing in and out and being aware of your surroundings and the way that your body's moving through space. But of course that was always done in like a beautiful forest or a forest. I mean, all forests are beautiful. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like doing that, I could try doing that here. Maybe that would be a thing to do. I don't know.
I'm really curious for you to do that and report back.
Yeah. I kind of I just don't want to go outside, and I don't want to. I think we probably have to wrap up, but do you think that this is something you want to keep doing? Walking daily?
Yes. I'm curious if I will without the accountability of you, because I definitely was more motivated because I was like, I can't show up to this and not have done it at all. But I think there were a few days where I was feeling really sluggish and like emotionally down, where going on the walk got me out of that. And that's something that I've been investigating in therapy for a while too, just the kind of like where my body goes when it's under stress. And like activating, I think, is really important for me. So it could be walk or like exercise or anything, a different type of exercise. So that's the long version of saying, yes, I want to keep walking when it feels like it will help my current emotional or physical state. What about you?
That, something you just said just made me have a small epiphany of just like before lockdown and before the restrictions, I so worked my body to like crazy conditions, like where I just would run on empty all day and walking like vast distances in order to get to places, and really like not nourishing myself, but still kind of pushing my body. But I didn't think of it that way because it's just utilitarian. It's not. But now I think walking for pleasure, or walking as a practice, or even now, like in order to, to stay active, I have to like actively seek out moving my body. And there's like a real attitude difference between just the sort of like existing and using your body versus like tending to your body that I didn't connect until just now. So great.
That is,
will I keep walking?
A beautiful realization.
Thank you. Will I keep doing it though? I don't know. I don't know. I think I really enjoy walking to and from the grocery store, but I don't necessarily enjoy walking. I think I need to have a goal. But yeah, I don't know. I think it will be good to get, yes, I'll say yes. For the next week, I will continue to walk every day. We can keep doing that.
Can I request that you try a walking meditation? At
Yeah,
least
yeah.
like twice. Give it like a few times, because I'm very curious to see if that shifts your experience of going on walks.
Yeah. We'll do. We'll try that.
Thanks so much for listening, and see you next time on Practice Practice with Krista and Kayla. Thanks to Xander Wickstrom for the use of our theme song, What Do I Do Now? A real bop.